Welcome back to Artificial Antics, where Rico and Mike will talk about the implications and opportunities around artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning. In today's episode, titled Navigating AI's Ethical Landscape, Challenges, Solutions, and the Role of Humans, Mike and Rico explore the concept of responsible AI. They discuss what it means across various domains, emphasizing its significance and the key principles that guide ethical practices in artificial intelligence.
With great power comes great responsibility. What's up, everybody? We're Artificial Antics. We're back here in the lab to cover a lot of ground today. We got a fantastic episode with Mike and I. We're going to be talking about how AI is transforming society currently, and how there's a need for some principles with AI to guide some of the development and the use, especially as the ethical implications are coming about and, the fairness of AI. So we're going to dig right into that. And first, let's cover the news. But Mike, you want to say hi to the folks?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Looking forward to tonight's episode. This is one of those things that we all need to be cognizant of. It doesn't matter how you're using AI, whether it's for business stuff or personal stuff. There are certain ways that, AI needs to be used, right, responsibly. And we all have a piece in that, right, including the people building it. So excited to jump into the news here and as well as our episode, Rico.
Sure. That's great, Mike. So let's take a look at the news and see what's happening. I'm sure everybody, especially over the past couple of years, have used Zoom in one fashion or another, with the working from home, and now remote work has become kind of a norm in society, especially here in America, that we hadn't seen previously to quite the scale it is now. But Zoom is actually updating their terms of service, Mike, to establish a right to use customer data like usage patterns for training its AI. And I'm sure there's some skeptical people out there, such as myself, previously a bit more skeptical. But we've known that tech companies for a couple of years now, or a few years, have done some things that are making people a little bit apprehensive about using it. A lot of times we just we accept the cookies, right? We're automatically scrolling down through the user agreement, and because that's the type of people we are, we all have like a 7-second attention span nowadays. Some of us a bit shorter. So when you're looking at Zoom going forward, folks, understand that there are some changes to the user agreement. And what they're doing is that Zoom has actually clarified that they won't be using the audio, video, or chat content to train AI without consent. However, part of that user agreement will be some wordage in there to actually get someone to click consent, so that they will use parts of it. Again, it will try to help the user experience in one way or another. And it kind of signals that Zoom is moving along in the AI industry, and they want to move their product further using AI. But expect to see some changes coming with the end user agreement anyway. With that, and it comes amid a wider debate on companies using customer data to train AI models without explicit opt-in consent, right? And Mike, you and I were talking about that earlier, that I've said that there's a few companies out there that have been using user data for years, and there was the whole Cambridge Analytica thing years back, where it was scraping data and lots of controversial stuff. So it's great that the information's come out. Hopefully Zoom is being upfront and honest with everybody about that, and letting that get out there. But
that's a really good point. And one note on that I just thought about while you were talking about that is, so remember back in April, when we started this idea and we were using Otter AI, and it was taking all of our recordings, it was taking our screenshots, everything, and it would roll it up into like a summary, right? Like in these different points. And I was like, so Zoom's kind of building this in, right, to their core product, which is smart, right? Because it gives them a competitive advantage. Otter can jump into Teams, it can jump into other meets, right? And they're giving themselves an advantage of hey, this is the product. It's a one-stop shop, as some people like to say. And there is something called Chorus AI, which is actually part of the Zoom Info company line that does like sentiment analysis and does really good deep summary, but not everybody needs that, right? Like sales, it's
Right.
really, really good, but like there aren't many other departments that need more than what like Otter does, right? Where it summarizes and kind of brings things together in a contiguous manner. So
Right. It'll be an interesting technology to see evolved, over time. It definitely will. And again, a lot of the time, most of our technology we use nowadays, the technologies that we use nowadays, they're really about convenience, right? I mean, that's what us as the user are trying to get from it, is it's making our life a little bit easier, simplifying things. So there has to be a give and take to that. And again, those models have to be trained one way or another. So, you kind of got to give a little bit to get something in return here.
Sure. Yeah, well, I think what I was thinking is I'm not sure that they're training off of your data to make the summarization tools. I think summarization LLMs like ChatGPT is fantastic at it already. I think what they're saying is that they're going to take the summarized data and train on that. That's what I actually think, right? So they'll determine like patterns and stuff like that. And I'll be honest, like most of the time your summarized data is going to be very concise and terse, right? But there may be a thing or two that would slip in that would be personal, right? I think back to our Zoom meetings with my team and other teams, and it's sort of like sometimes I look at those Otter summaries and it's like, we're talking about, somebody's boat or whatever, right? For a minute or two, and it ends up as a summary item. So it's hilarious, but it wouldn't be hilarious necessarily to be, to be training AI on something personal. I don't think I've ever seen anything that like alarms me about what they're going to do here, right? Like, I think like it's never like, my specific name and my address, like that isn't really what it does, right?
Yeah, they're not trying to dox you.
Yeah, right. So, yep. But yeah, no, that very interesting stuff, Rico, for sure with Zoom, and they're being out there in the open and upfront with it, and that doesn't mean that they're doing everything perfectly, as we know. But it's good that people are at least aware, right? A lot of your responsible AI is building an awareness and everybody being alerted, and then really making their own page. As we're going to talk about later, right? Folks, responsible AI isn't going to be the same for every company, every country. It's going to be different, right? Like we're building these diverse systems. We have to build it with a diverse set of data, and your AI might not look like my AI, right? Period. Seriously.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yep. We've seen that so far. So jumping into another news segment, and this is something I absolutely love to talk about. I'm in no way an expert in the crypto world, but I've enjoyed trading cryptocurrency for a couple of years now. I love looking at new projects when they come out.
Yeah, you just got that new Bugatti Chiron, right? Like from like cryptocurrency.
Yeah, no, not unfortunately, not in this economy. And if you're making it well in this economy and know how to do that, please contact me and let me know. But no, I don't trade crypto quite as much as I was a couple of years ago, just because I don't have the time to keep up with it nearly the way I'd like to, and the market is absolutely horrible. Anyway, back to the news here. So OpenAI CEO Sam Altman launches a Worldcoin, and he did this on July 23rd. We actually looked at the ticker on it earlier. So if you're interested in cryptocurrency and tickers, it's WLD. There is another Worldcoin out there. Has a different ticker, but the one that we're talking about in this segment is WLD. And this one actually called a World ID, which provides proof of personhood. Now, that's probably going to scare a few people, with that type of stuff.
Well, I'm a skeptic.
Yeah, that's right. But it's very Tony Stark, right? Yeah. So, I mean, we want to
They have jetpacks now. Have you seen this? They have like...
I do. I have the racing and...
racing, man. It's so freaking cool.
Yeah, you'll be able to buy that with this cryptocurrency once you invest in it and get that off the ground for them.
Rico coin.
Yeah, not yet, maybe. If anybody's wondering too, if you do buy cryptocurrency, the price I saw just a bit ago, I checked the hour, and it's currently trading at 1.85. So it's $1.85 per coin, down 5.3% for the day. So again, WLD coin, and that's Worldcoin. And it's similar to Bitcoin and Ethereum, so I'm sure it'll probably correlate or trend with those. as a digital asset. It uses blockchain like all the other cryptocurrencies. And despite its ambitions, Worldcoin has already faced criticisms around the world, allegedly for deceptive sign-up practices in some countries. I did take a look at a bunch of the exchanges. I used multiple exchanges myself. It's not being traded on Coinbase, which is a very common one that most folks use. It's not on Uphold. Of course, it's on Bitmart. If anybody out there trades crypto knows about Bitmart, it's on Bitmart. It's not on Binance.us. So you'll probably have to look around for this coin if you're interested in trading it, but it is out there, and it is, let's see, I think it started at, what I tell you, it was 385. I think it started at opening day 380, and it's down to 185 now. So there may be some potential for upward movement depending on what the news, happens with this coin. So it's a new crypto project, obviously. So it faces regulatory challenges going forward in the current climate of crypto crackdowns, and a lot of legislature, a lot of regulation they're looking at, and they have been looking at for the past couple of years to try to prevent rug pulls, and other bad projects out there.
Sure,
yeah, they're going to take out your retail investors. So something to look for, folks. They're looking to tie this in so it has some AI to it, because OpenAI is involved with it. So if you're interested in crypto and AI, you can combine the two together with Worldcoin. So, and we are no way endorsing this coin. Not telling you to go out and purchase it, anything like that. We're not financial advisors, so please do your own due diligence and take a look at that stuff on your own. Yeah. So for any of you out there that use Tinder, and you think, how could they possibly improve Tinder, right? So now Tinder is actually taking a look at using AI. And I think this is kind of funny. I think there's a lot of jokes here to be made, and I'm not going to make most of them. But the fact that they're using AI to test photographs and how they're received, right? So it automatically chooses the 5 best photos from a user's album for their dating profile. So for those of you who are, similar to me or similar to Mike, I guess, where you're a middle-aged man, you really don't know how to dress yourself, or, that this selfie's not great or on trend with what people are doing now. They have AI tools now that are going to help you select your best 5 profile pictures. And of course, they're going to say that this will help people eliminate, finding the right picture for their profile. They're also going to use AI to improve content relevance, hinting at potential uses like generating bios. Now, what's interesting, Mike, and I'm sure this is an implication that we'll see down the road, when is it going to start swiping for folks and making some decisions based upon some predetermined things? I bet you we see something like that. I don't know how ethical that will be, but it may take out some of the guesswork for some folks. Maybe AI will find you a better mate than you can find for yourself.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
So they have some concerns around the authenticity and privacy related to to deception. So they're going to be working with that. But here's AI getting involved in the match game with Tinder. So
that's interesting. So this is like slightly it's on topic of Tinder, but off topic for AI. I was watching something the other day about Tinder, and they were talking about stats wise. It's like for a guy, they don't, like, the women have the pick of the litter because it's like 7% women or something like that, and like the rest is guys. So if you're going on Tinder and you're a statistical stats person, it's very unlikely that you're going to get an option that you're really excited about if you're a guy. But the women, it's really great for, right? Because it's like, oh man, I can get somebody that's out of my league because the decks are stacked, right?
Sure.
All right, folks. So yeah, Rico, the stories there were pretty interesting. The Tinder one, especially, I think is pretty interesting. Like, this isn't just for like geeky stuff, right? Like, AI is starting to be used in everything, right? I was looking at some of the trending topics on Future Tools, which is a site that we go to a lot for our news and our latest stuff. And one thing that I saw, and it was on multiple articles, is X company is going to be incorporating AI into everything, into every product, every, and I saw this like at least 2 or 3 times. 2 examples were Apple and Intel. And so, it's only going to be more omnipresent in our lives, and we probably won't even notice it because it's just going to be, a nice convenience, right? Creature comforts that we're not even going to notice at some point. So, at least what's happening now with conversational AI, right? So, speaking of creature comforts and AI being built into everything, one of the stories that I have is I noticed that Jasper AI, which is a big, like copywriting and their, creative company AI tool that had been around for a while and was, was probably still really popular too. I mean, people still mention it as, oh, Jasper AI, I use that or whatever. And I kind of in my mind laugh a little bit. Then I tell them, oh, well, most of the features and functionality, like it's streamlined for a specific task, but I said ChatGPT 4 can do that job, pretty much as good, right? You just have to guide it with the system prompts and whatnot, and let it know where your place in the world is, where its place in the world is. If you tell it you're a world famous copywriter, with a style like X name, right? Like somebody who's really good at copy, it'll actually produce you copy like that, right? My point here is that at this point, the base tools now are starting to become as good as these specialized tools like Jasper. And there's another one called Mutiny AI, which is sort of like website AI automation. And Mutiny AI and Jasper AI have both laid off about 10% of their workforce. Like Jasper, I don't know where it was placed with Mutiny, but Jasper, it was across the board. They literally, tough economical times, right? I mean, this is just the thing, right? You talked about it with crypto earlier. And so they're cutting in all aspects, right? And they want to survive, right? I mean, and that's the thing. So not every company cuts to survive. A lot of them cut for additional profit, but Jasper, it sounds like, is cutting maybe for a combination of the two, right? So, and then we're talking about, letting ChatGPT with the system prompt know your place in the world. Well, there's been an advancement with this, which is called ChatGPT. This is a feature for Plus users, so you have to be paying the $20 a month, but it's a really great feature called custom instructions. And what custom instructions do, Rico, actually, I just remembered, we demoed this together.
We did,
so
yes.
We'll be releasing something on this. Yeah. So what custom instructions allows you to do is like ChatGPT, what I was doing is my first message, which is called the system message. The ChatGPT conversation that first message will be remembered throughout the whole thing. So if I say, I'm a copywriter like X famous copywriter in that first message, it will write everything in the style of that copywriter. It will narrow everything down to the context of that, which you want in a lot of cases, right? We don't need the whole world of information for our answers. A lot of times we just need it from a specific context of somebody who's a professional, right? Or in our industry or at a company of our size, right? Well, with custom instructions, they make this really easy because you can set up ChatGPT now to just always have a certain context for, who you are. And, and then in addition, there's another field for like how you want your answers back, right? Do you prefer concise answers? Do you want things with a concise answer and then 3 bullet points that are the most important things? You can actually have ChatGPT, you guide it, and it does this really, really well. I mean, there's some little gotchas which we'll go through when we do that session directly, but this is a super valuable feature. And Rico, did you have anything more to say on that? Because I know we used it together. Like, what were your impressions?
No, I thought it was a really nice adaptation, that they've made to that to improve upon it. Of course, I don't pay for the premium, so we always test it on your account. But yeah, no, I think that was a good addition to it. And one thing I was going to say when you were saying you could choose the style, I was going to say, well, can I get like DMX or Bloodhound Gang style, or like Jay-Z's style of writing? Can I get that back?
Listen, this is AI. This is not, we can't work miracles here. The answer is yes. The answer is absolutely yes. You want to write a rap song in the style of DMX? Do it. You can
You
do
can.
it.
Absolutely can.
You know, I'm DMX, a famous rapper. I want to write a new song. Yes, that's a thing. That's a real thing, right? And so that's an important, let's call it a tip or an efficiency improver with ChatGPT is, you don't just want to say, write me a blog post on X. You want to let it know, hey, what type of blog do you write? Who are you in the world, right? And it will really personalize it and tailor it to that context. So that system prompt is hugely valuable.
Because X gonna give it to you.
X gonna give it to you. Gonna give it to you. All right, I'm done.
I don't know if you caught
Dude,
what you said.
No, that's
With
amazing.
X.
Yeah, that is.
Rest in peace, DMX. He was a fantastic artist.
R.I.P.
Loved his movies.
R.I.P. So there's a thing in AI. It's called model collapse, and
yes.
and Rico. So you mentioned that you read my blog post on it. What was your take on this? You want to kind of explain this to people? Because one thing really quick before you start, one thing, folks, that we're always striving for and we insist on is that we're writing, we're creating, we're making videos for everybody, right? This is not for, if you're a geek, you can watch the show and understand it. We want everybody to understand it. So, Rico, what was your take?
So I want to just tell the crowd that I am personally responsible for part of the model collapse of AI because some of the things that I've asked it to do have been quite stupid. Writing kids' books and all the other things. And some of the podcasts that you and I enjoy, it's funny because that All In podcast, there was an episode recently where there was one of the gentlemen on it that actually was like, kind of giving it to the rest of the co-hosts on this show because they were using such superficial AI tasks. They were giving ChatGPT such, trivial things to do, like write, and all the other stuff. And yes, that's a part of it, but they weren't really pressing the boundaries of it right, and I gave you an example earlier of having it create a government with certain inputs just to see what it did. So yes, as far as model collapse, I'm partially responsible for model collapse for not feeding ChatGPT and other AI all the inputs it needs to improve itself. So you can explain a little bit more about what model collapse is.
No, that's super interesting. So really what model collapse has to do with is about the inputs at the end of the day, and how this happens, right? Is the trend is that AI trains its initial data set on human data, right? Like it's scientists and researchers, and they're putting in a bunch of data and they're curating it, right? These are all the smart people in the world, right? Like they're all but that doesn't mean, right? And we're talking about responsible AI here. That doesn't mean that they all share a universal ethical code or anything, right?
Correct.
So
yeah,
we'll talk more about that later. I'm like super excited about that. But so what happens is you get humans that curate, and that data and that model ends up being generally really, really good because it has a lot of data and it has a human curation. And so, this is called supervised learning. There's supervised and unsupervised. Then there's semi-supervised. But, how you split this up is supervised is like humans are tagging a bunch of data, right? You're giving it a bunch of data and you're tagging that data so that it knows really what to do with it, what happened. It gives it context, like we talked about giving context earlier, right? Mm-hmm. And then unsupervised is sort of like you build the algorithm in such a way that it can take a bunch of data and just kind of figure it out, right? So AI has both, but, related to like supervised learning, like a lot of these LLMs are definitely part of that training is supervised data and human curation. And so model collapse will happen when AI that was originally generated then trains on additional AI generated content, right? So Rico, it's actually not just you not pushing the boundaries. It's the simple fact of no matter what you create with it, if then AI trains on the stuff that was created with it, they call that synthetic data. Like it's data that really didn't come from a human. I mean, yes, it may be, have some descriptive data in there, but it's still not coming from like an original creator, right? Like a human mind. And so what happens then is that the AI starts to wash out certain aspects and it takes what it considers the best. So you end up with every time I want ChatGPT to write me a blog post, it uses the word delve, right? Delve, for God's sakes. And so I started to notice this pattern, and I actually joke around with a guy that I know. He's really into AI, right? And so him and I just joke about Delve. And I sent something to him today. I said, so I was looking at my Gmail box, and I saw something right in the headline. It was like a Medium article. It said, "We're going to delve into whatever," and so I didn't click on that article because I don't, right? And I said, then I was like, yeah, like then I did a search on the word delve in my Gmail box, and I got about 12 results since like the end of July, right? So that's like
you're
about
suspect.
9. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, and most of them are Medium articles, but some of them are other articles or book companies. And I'm like, so Delve just must have been like the silver bullet. Unraveling's another one that I've noticed. Like I noticed these patterns.
I've noticed that a bunch in
and,
ChatGPT.
And even my older blogs, like I've got Unraveling in there somewhere, but I strip Delve out now. I try to rewrite Unraveling. Like I want this stuff to be
authentic,
original,
or at
and
least feel it
from me, right? Like, yes, sure, I'm going to use these tools. Oh, so let me go in a little bit deeper. So that happens, right? Then AI trains again on training data that it trained on from old training data, right? So this compounds the issue, right? And so what happens is there was a guy from Google Deepmind. It's an AI piece of Google, but they're looking at trying to do AI responsibly, right? Which is really important. And so this gentleman did a study, and so what they did was they started out the AI with a sample of, it had like 10 yellow cats and 3 white cats and 3 black cats and 3, they gave it a bigger sample size of these yellow cats, right? And then they trained that original data, and then they created a bunch of content around that, right? Then they trained AI back on that set of data, the same AI, right? And ultimately within, I don't know the number of iterations exactly, but there ended up being everything. Whenever you wanted a cat, it'd be a yellow cat. There's no white cats. There's no black cats. There's no spotted cats. Yellow cats. Right. That is a problem, right?
That's a huge problem.
Huge problem. So this all ends up being, washed out, and so you don't get that originality there. So one way that you, the listener, us, and everybody else can prevent this is to leave a human element in things, right? Like when you're creating that blog post, maybe it isn't, like, make sure it's punctually correct and the grammar makes sense, but leave pieces of you everywhere. You know what I mean? Like, you want to be very present. And so then as AI is training on that additional data, it's not just training on data that, it created, right? Or some other AI created. So that's model collapse. The headline here is that, ChatGPT, some studies have shown that it's getting stupider, right? Like, some of them are labeled, it's getting stupider, but it's losing, kid you not, it's like losing some of its abilities or getting worse at some of its abilities, specifically in like code generation and compositional stuff, right? And then, like math, as part of that equation, like I think that I heard that it used to be 97% accurate with these certain types of math problems, and now it's 2.7% accurate.
Wow.
So you used to almost always get it right. Now it almost always gets it wrong. And one quick note here is that they're noticing that the trend is worse with GPT-4 because it's newer and they're like going hard with training it and continuing to like refine it. Whereas GPT-3, it's a little older data, but like it's actually kind of better at certain things, right? It is not better at everything, to be very, very clear. GPT-4, still the superior model. But, one major thought there is that, we've said it before on the show, you need to keep a critical mind when you're getting data, especially specific data. Do this math problem, you better have a calculator and check some of it, right? Like you gotta you gotta check the sample at least. Like make sure
trust
these things
but verify.
Trust but verify, right? Yep. We talked about that lawyer a few episodes back. We talked about that lawyer who, got those cases. They were fake cases. He asked ChatGPT, are these real cases? I mean, don't do that. Don't be that lawyer, right?
You know what I'm hearing from you though is I'm hearing the rise of Skynet, because think about this. So on what you just said, so if it degrades AI over time, this is another case of humans destroying something that it could be a greater force than themselves. In essence, right? That's what they're doing. And for AI to actually survive that, what would they have to do? Right?
Right.
You think about it, instead of us dumbing it down. So I'm just throwing that out there. I don't think that's actually going to happen. Honestly, I really don't. But it's an interesting concept to see the impact that we're having on it. And again, the human element, that's the biggest takeaway in every bit of it. You can automate a lot of processes here, but it still takes a human element to begin that process and then check it when it comes out the other side to see what kind of product they ended up with. So
yeah, absolutely. So I think that's it on my side of the news. Rico, did you have anything to add?
Awesome. No, just what I said so far. Those are very, very awesome articles, honestly. And there's so much happening. It's really hard to keep up with it all, but it's fascinating to hear your take on things, Mike, especially on the technical side of things. So thanks for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And same with you. I think that there's a lot of interesting stuff going on right now in AI. And, we're trying to really drill down on the ones that have the impact across the board, right? Like we've said before, we're never going to go like super far in one direction. We're covering AI as a topic, but we're here for the every person, right? And so that's it. So I'm excited to get into our episode tonight.
We're going to talk about responsible AI. What is responsible AI? And there are 4 key pillars to responsible AI, and that's fairness, accountability, transparency, and privacy protection. And all of those are very important, as I'm sure that most people that use any technology now want all of those things included, especially when it comes to products coming out from companies like Google and some of the others. And I won't delve. See what I did there? I won't delve too far.
No pun intended. I don't even think that pun was intended, was it?
ChatGPT did not write that. I literally said that off the cuff. Yeah, so I won't go too far into it, but a lot of the time people are suspicious nowadays of tech companies and bias, and these are things that we really have to make sure we're coming forward with and not having a product that's leaning too far one way or the other, that it's going to be, even across the board and fair. Another thing we need to do is ensure that AI avoids harm, bias, manipulation, infringement of rights. That's a huge one, right? Mm-hmm. And you and I have talked about that, especially with using ChatGPT, because we've had our own curiosity as to which way would it lean if we gave it, a certain string, a certain prompt. What's it going to give back to us? And we're also going to be covering the designing of AI that augments human capabilities in ethical ways. A lot of talk on that, when I know Elon Musk does a lot of talk about the Neurolink and things like that. Yeah. And I'm sure there'll be some AI implications with that as well. So
that's extremely interesting to me, by the way. The Neurolink is really interesting. I don't even want to talk about it because I'll probably gush on it for a bit. But if you don't know what the Neurolink is, basically, and I don't know a ton about it, but here's what I know. I know that it's something that links to your brain, like legitimately physically links to your brain and can read your thoughts and allows somebody, let's say, that, can't move their arm. Neurolink can bridge those neural pathways in their brain, between their brain and their muscles. Right. But they can get there. Right. And they can move their arms. They can, blind people can see. It's like, it really is stuff like that. It's like insane. And I love it. I think that is amazing. Do I think there are implications in hooking into somebody's brain? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I do.
It definitely is. Yeah.
But I love the idea of that. And I think there's a real beauty in enabling people who have these, disabilities, right, to be able to experience life like the rest of us, right?
Right. That's an ethical approach for sure.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Where it would go off the rails would be, just somebody who wants to have Google at their fingertips by putting something in their brain so they can search a bit faster.
Right.
That type of thing. Would it be great? Yeah. Is it ethical? Probably not. It's an enhancement I'm sure we'll see in our time, honestly. Sure. I remember seeing shows years ago where they talked about putting like a microchip in your eye that could pick out certain things, could scan certain things. And we're headed there. You know,
we're 100%
definitely
headed there. Yeah, exactly,
Yep.
exactly. Yeah, and so Rico, can you go through those 4 pillars just one more time, and then let's
Sure.
actually
Yeah.
like let's stop at each pillar and like talk a little bit about those.
Sure. So fairness is one of the key pillars. And again, we want AI to be fair, like the applications of AI to be fair. Yeah. Obviously, these are powerful tools, and the implications of using these tools is severe. So, if let's say, for instance, you had a difference of opinion, or you had or you were from a different culture, a different background, a different political affiliation, whatever the case may be, you don't want one person or that group of people to have all the power,
Right.
especially when it comes to that, because those situations get dire, right? Especially nowadays with kind of the climate, the world climate, we'll even say.
Right.
Yep, it wouldn't take much for it to fall into the wrong hands, and there's going to be some things going on there, and also just the fairness so that one group of people isn't getting the leg up in life on a constant basis.
Yeah, exactly.
Economically.
It kind of goes back to that model collapse thing too, right? That like it's part of the, hey, oh, you want a cat? Here's your yellow cat, right?
Right.
Like that's a big problem. And folks, fairness, another word for that would be ethics, right? It's the ethical part, directly the ethical part. So we want to make sure that people are getting the answers, and the world is being evolved, right, in an ethical way, right? So that's fairness. Another one of them, I'll just start with this, is transparency, right? So transparency, what that really means is, I've heard this, and I heard something the other day. It's like, well, this is kind of BS. Oh, well, we don't know. We're at the point now where we're just working on these models and this AI, and we really don't even know how it does its things or how it got its answers or whatever. And to a degree, that's somewhat true. Transparency, though, says, hey, we need to think about this end to end. You better figure out a way to tag that. And I like how Bing will automatically cite its sources. That's not exactly perfect, right? But it is nice, right? And so it's sort of like, how did we get to this decision? Because that what you could do with those details is you can assess, right? Are we having an issue here with ethical stuff, or with something related,
citing the same sources?
Something related to some consistent like delve, right? Like, so you can figure out why you're having those problems, and then if let's say AI is going to be regulated, right? Like, we don't know what that regulation is exactly going to look like, but there's a point where, okay, AI made this really bad decision. Why? Trace it back. Transparency. So that's transparency. Rico, do you want to touch on accountability?
Yeah, absolutely. I think accountability is a big part of it. And, I think a lot of folks, when they hear accountability or they think about laws being passed, right? Because ultimately that's what it comes down to. Laws, policies, structures being things like this, you want to see run rampant to some degree. You want to be able to get in there, get your hands on it and other things, and especially for the many folks out there that are entrepreneurs who are using these tools currently. And, Elon Musk expressed a few months back, he wanted them to kind of put a pause on it, right? Because it takes time for legislature, for rules to be made, whether that's at the tech company itself, be a policy driven thing, or whether it's a law being passed to kind of slow things down. But we do need accountability, especially with tools like this. So that's got to come with time. It'll be interesting to see which companies develop the policies and how they'll try to match those up. You're going to have some that are going to want to press boundaries, and we've talked about that in past episodes, like Microsoft versus Google, right? And some of the implications there. But yeah, accountability is going to be an important thing, because we want to make sure that people are doing the right thing, that they're held to, especially the companies developing them. We watched the Google video, and they touched on some things, and I had raised some concerns to you, because I'm sorry, Google, but you've been caught the past couple of years censoring speech or diverting attention. And I'm not going to get into which direction because it really doesn't matter. It's the fact that it happened at all. And that's where a lot of the distrust comes in. So it's going to take transparency that you were talking about, accountability, and really getting into it to make sure that ethics are being followed. So I think accountability is going to be a huge part of it. I'm for it. I'm not a big legislature guy. I don't want to see a ton of laws. I think that we should have some freedom to roam around and do some things. But I think with this, it's going to be important to put a few guardrails up to protect people.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. And, something you mentioned a little earlier, like during the accountability conversation was, it'll be interesting to see what people come up with, what guidelines they follow or whatever. So I heard something today. I was listening to this on the way home, and they were talking about 5 of the biggest AI companies have agreed on, and obviously they're working with politicians on this and everything, but they've agreed on some very base standards that it's sort of like it's a guideline now, but there's very much like a carrot and a stick aspect, and don't do this and you're gonna get the stick, right? Like, so they're giving them a lot of advantages based on, hey, you're following this, or disadvantages if you're not, right? So I think that we're gonna, I think that's a good starting point, that they are starting to be, okay, we've all agreed, like after a bunch of conversations, they've been doing a lot of stuff on this with legislature and, figuring out okay, what are we going to do, to regulate this, but still allow this to grow somewhat organically, because you really do have to, right? Like Claude, right. Anthropic is the company that makes Claude, and I did a little segment on Claude too. And what they're doing is they're doing something called constitutional AI, which falls under the responsible AI umbrella. It's got the pieces that you'd expect, the ones we're talking about now, but kind of some additional stuff, and it's a little bit tailored to their approach, which is great. And so with Claude, they're really trying to ensure, right, that these tools are being used responsibly out of the gate. And part of it's kind of like, it might be a marketing thing or whatever, but I don't think it's all that, right? And I will say that ChatGPT and Microsoft, they're all building some guardrails into this, right? But it's really it's the approach that you take to ensure, right, that you don't run into these issues, especially these issues around ethics, and if you do, that you're accountable, right, that you're transparent so you can trace it back. And then the last pillar is privacy. Do you want to kind of talk about that? And then I have a few thoughts on that as well.
Sure. I think that's another thing we worry about nowadays with identity theft. That's been a big problem for years, especially in the digital age, right? Huge problem. And these tools, again, are very powerful. They can scour the internet quite quickly, right? Especially when they catch it up to, modern information instead of staying back in 2021. There's definitely some problems that could happen there. And one other thing I just want to mention on that too was that we also don't want another tool that governments can just beat people with, right? So you don't want the government on the back door of Google, the back door of any of these other companies, OpenAI, that are creating this stuff, so that they can weaponize the tools against us. That's going to be a huge problem. So privacy protection, huge thing. There's a lot of things that you already have to go through where, let's say ChatGPT, for instance, you have to enter a cell phone number. You know what I mean? So obviously that information is now tied to you. And we've talked about that in past episodes, where my take on that is, because of safety concerns, because it's a powerful tool, lots of things can be done. So there has to be some accountability there. But the individual should also be protected. The companies should be protected, as they develop this stuff. Because again, we're here in America, we're a capitalist society. So, they should have competitive advantage where they develop it. Right.
Yeah.
So I think privacy protection will be a very important thing, both for the user and for the companies themselves.
Yeah, for sure. And we're going to go into too, some of the do's and don'ts, right, with privacy a little later in the episode, because there's a huge, there's obviously the developers of AI, right, have a responsibility. There's There's the machine, right, which obviously it's its own thing created by the developers that create and the researchers and whatnot, right? It's an element, right? But the third element and the most probably important element and kind of ties back to element one is the human element, right?
Correct.
There are things we can do or do not do. Matter of fact, so I'll just do a quick anecdotal thing here. So I started, at Clarity where I work, I started an AI committee, right? Because I don't want to be the only one that is understanding AI, can teach people AI. It really needs to be a distributed thing, kind of like we talked about. There's diversity there. There's all these different aspects. Can't be the Mike Onslow show. I don't run the Mike Onslow show. Even on this show, I don't run the Mike Onslow show. So it's important to me, right, to elevate others and really give them an understanding and give them ownership, right? And one of the ladies that's on that committee, she came up with something because we were talking about, privacy and different stuff. And she said, we should create like a do not do this or do not do list. And I said,
right.
Yeah, that's awesome. Right. Cause like we're talking about what our first, training and lunch and learn is going to be on this, like as a for the whole company. And before we give you the tools, we need to, it's sort of like watching the safety thing before, like you go and start using the power tools, right? Like, or whatever shop class, right. Like, let's go through some basics of safety and, hey, do not do, right?
Yeah.
So, and I said, yeah, man, that's great. I think we're going to use that name verbatim for that section. Do not do. And so, I was talking to, somebody else on the committee, and we were talking today about, like, okay, well, there's some no-brainers with do not do, but I said, what we should do? I said, let's go ahead and take a look at our employee handbook and, what it says about confidentiality. And it was really specific on things. I said, man,
sure,
this is a great base, right? So if you're designing an AI policy at your company, I would say, around privacy, there are definitely some like additional things we're going to have to add because this is very nuanced, right? Start with your employee handbook, right? Look at what you have in there about things that people should or shouldn't be able to share. And then I would say that would be your base guiding principle around the privacy and what you would put into ChatGPT or what you wouldn't, right? In addition, there is one, like, I want to mention it right now. One additional thing with ChatGPT is you never want to give specific identifying information. Like, so if I wouldn't put like my first and last name does X and X, or X and Y or
right.
whatever, because I think even if you would share that on social media, there's a danger in training AI with that very specific information. It will probably wipe it out and you'd never get that anyway, but you just never know, right? So
why risk it?
Yeah, why risk it, right? So, and another, really with privacy, I think the biggest thing is that, like, what you put in it and what you don't. Now, another thing I'm going to mention, though, is you could still use these tools and keep the data private. Like, that's another thing that, you need to consider for your business is you can build a private GPT, like your company name GPT or whatever, right? And keep all of the data in your systems. And I think that's the approach that most companies will do. They'll have their own, custom tailored model for how they run their company, right? And how they would get their answers with their data, right? This is not a new concept. Like, this is being done. Like, probably most companies are working on their custom, conversational AI, and you're using tools that open source tools that exist. Like recently, Meta released some of their bigger Llama 2 models. And I know some people that are digging into that and like hosting it on their own machine, right? So they're keeping the data private, but they still get like, I think Llama has, and this isn't the best, judge of a model's sophistication, but 70 billion parameters, right? Llama 2, Meta created it. It's decent, right? Like he said, yeah, it's actually really decent, right? It probably isn't exactly ChatGPT, but it's close, and it keeps all your data on your metal, right? Which can be important for some certain types of data.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's privacy.
All right, Mike. So we covered some of the challenges that AI is going to be facing. Are there solutions out there? I mean, obviously they're working on some stuff. What do you know on the solutions to some of these problems?
Yeah, so one of the challenges that we mentioned here in the last little bit was the diversity, right? Like the ethical stuff. And so I was reading an article, it was Harvard Business Review, and it said, "Want more diverse AI? Hire a more diverse team," right? And it was talking about the representation levels of like females and like people of color are like abysmal, right, at these big
Sure.
companies like Facebook and Google. And this article is a couple years old, but I didn't find anything to the contrary that anything has really changed, and this is shifted in the last 3 years, so, or 2 years or whatever. So I think that's a big part of it, Rico, is the people who are the researchers, the scientists, the developers. We need an inclusive group of people
For sure.
that that to get the right thing. Now, another thing that can be done is, we were talking about creating, let's say, a specific AI model for businesses. Well, they've talked about, and I think that everybody kind of agrees that it'll probably get to this point where there might be an AI for every country, right? And then there might be
Mhm.
sub AIs for regions, right? Because what you don't want to do, right, is, sure, this is a global economy, it's a global everything, right? Like, we're all global, but we're
Right.
really not, right? Like, when I
Right.
walk out my door, it's a whole different world than it is for you, and it's really a
Sure.
different world for, like, my guys over in India and different stuff. Like, the cultures are different, everything, the climate's freaking different, right? So
Correct.
we need to design these things in such a way that they're somewhat localized, right? And whether it be localized at the business, it'll be a combination of all of these things, by the way. So we have the business level, the regional level, so all of, even the personal level, right? Like, I've heard a bunch of times, like, that there will very likely, you'll have your own little personal AI that understands you. I told you about the system prompt and
Finally,
the custom.
somebody
Yeah, finally somebody that you can just talk to, and they're just gonna,
that understands
they're gonna
me.
get you right, Rico, because you're a complex being. You're a complex being.
Right.
So
I tell everybody I'm a simple person, but
yeah. Well, I'll just ask your girlfriend if you're a simple person, and I
that's
bet
right.
I'm gonna get a different answer. So so anyway, so that's one way to really ensure that like I said about the yellow cats, right? Like, we want to make sure that we have the representation there, and one way to do that, right, is to have the developers, the researchers, the scientists, you know, be a diverse group, but also create these tools that are these models that are more specialized to a region, a business, or whatever, right? So, and like Rico said, they'll get you, right? And so I wouldn't doubt that there will be companies out there that are, hey, build your own AI, right? Like, there already are, but like a really easy one where it's just like, put in a bunch of facts about you, and so kind of like Elmaya Life, right? Like, where I told you that you can, people can actually build like an avatar, a living avatar that will answer questions even after they're gone. It's that type of stuff, right? Like,
Right.
how would Jack answer a question, or of this type? Well, you bring in a lot of, and this really is like that supervised learning that I mentioned, where it's like, well, this is all about Jack, right? You like kind of write your memoir, and you train AI with that, and then AI might not get it right every time, but it will at least get it. I think it will have a general gist of the way that you'd answer, right? And
Mhm.
so we're gonna test a mile life out here.
Sure.
I'm not sure exactly what episode we have that scheduled for, but that's gonna be happening. And so we'll kind of go through that, right, and show you again in the vein of transparency. We'll show you what those inputs were, right, so that you can understand how we designed Emmy and what Emmy's quote unquote
Output.
place in life is. Yeah, like,
Right.
well, the input and the output, right? We're gonna really show the input as well, because people need to know, or want to know, right? Like, well, okay, why would Emmy answer that question that certain way, right? Oh, well,
Right.
maybe it stems from this, or a combination of A, B, and C, right? So that's gonna be interesting. So another way that people are solving challenges with AI, and I just need to pull up my notes here because I had a bunch of good notes on this.
There's one thing I just want to say on the last thing you were saying, though, before we move on.
Oh, sure.
So you're talking about the cultural differences, and like we said, outside of my doorstep and your doorstep, even though we're both in the United States, is quite different. The areas and lingo and food and all of that stuff. What's interesting, and you kind of sparked it in me. I'm wondering if the governments of the world, or the scientists of the world, or the tech people of the world will get together and try to combine all of that information. You think about that. What if you could ultimately combine languages, all cultures, all of that stuff?
Dude, I think they should call that "We Are the World" bot.
Right. Yeah, that's right. There's your throwback.
Yeah, man. Tina Turner, another one. R.I.P. Tina Turner.
I loved that song as a kid, and I will say that my mother even had a snow globe that would play "We Are the World."
My mom was so into that song. I liked it too. Like, it's a good song. But like, my mom, I remember she would cry. She'd cry when the music video would come on.
I remember the video.
Yep.
Anyway.
So and that's a segue. No, actually, it's completely unrelated, folks. But so the next thing that I was going to talk about is, transparency. Another piece of transparency that I didn't mention earlier, but I'll mention now, is being transparent with the capabilities and what you can expect from the AI tools, right? That's extremely important. You don't want to ever make claims that, this is going to give you X percentage, of correct answers or whatever. Like, you might know the details of the likelihood of whatever statistical answer, but the reality is you can't promise that, and you should set the expectation in the exact opposite, which I think a lot of these tools really have. They have, like, you open it up for the first time, and hopefully you're not completely scrolling the TOC, but they have it in your face like multiple times. Blockade is like really good about this. I swear I got like 5 little things, and it's like, but it's also telling me about new features and everything else. Like, they're just really good with, like, hey, let's get this information and be realistic about what this does and what it doesn't do and what it might do right or wrong. But it's really setting the expectation, right? So that people don't think that this is a silver bullet, because none of these AIs are a silver bullet, right?
Right. And I will say too, my take on the transparency thing as well, if they want people using these tools, everyday people want transparency. They want to understand it. They want to understand the companies that are making it. They want to understand to some degree how it works. Now, we may not understand everything about the man behind the curtain, right, on these, but transparency for me is going to make me more comfortable feeling like, okay, so this is what they're doing with my data. I understand that from the end user agreement. I also understand where this was formed from. So it's not some magical process. There is a process to it. And these companies, I hope they take that into account, that if you want people using your tools, you got to speak down to, to us who don't understand it fully, that aren't technical people, and be transparent with us.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. All of that makes sense. And I think that, another thing, I was just thinking about privacy. We're talking about challenges, right? Well, privacy is a challenge. I do know that a lot of these AIs will have the ability, right, for it not to save any of your data, right? So with ChatGPT, you can actually turn that off. Now, you lose the ability, like, here's what my thought on this, right? My thought is you should just use it responsibly, and again, go back to your handbook at your company or whatever, and say, okay, I'm just not going to put this type of information in there, right? I could still use these tools. I can still get a lot of great information, but unless I'm building and using my private GPT, I'm going to use this ChatGPT tool that's on the internet. in, a very cautious way, right? So for me, I just let it save the history, because I'm putting data in there that isn't private anyway. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
Correct.
and that gives me the ability then to use the tool and go back and reference my old conversations very easily, which is incredibly freaking helpful, right? Like, as I'm
I do
going
it all
through
the time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's my take on that is, yes, you can turn it off, and that's how they're solving the challenge. Personal take, that's not exactly how I'm not using that feature of ChatGPT.
Yep.
So I think that's really, that's it for some of the bigger, the other challenge, right, is accountability, and regulation is being formed, right? We mentioned that in the first segment, and, to be determined for sure. We'll link the guiding principles that the 5 big players in AI can agree on and are starting to implement, right? To get that carrot rather than the stick. And so I'll add that, and I think really that's it for the end of this segment, which will bring us into the next segment, which is the human element, which is probably the segment I'm the most interested in here. We are the world.
We are the children. Is there a role of humans in AI? I mean, there has to be.
No, because here's the deal. The machines, they got this covered, Rico. I mean, that's the whole point of this thing, right? Is we train them once. We don't have to ever worry about it again, right? Like, they'll continue to compound. They'll train themselves. I mean, that's the dream, bro. It's like having a kid and they can wash the dishes. The AI can just do the things for you, right?
When can I stop working? That's the question. When can I just stop working? Yeah, well, they can start paying my bills. That'd be great.
Yeah, no, for sure. So anyway, yeah. So what we're going to talk about next really is the role of humans in all of this, right? There's a human element. We've alluded to it. We've actually mentioned a couple of things. We are responsible, right? And so yeah, Rico, do you want to kind of like start us off in this segment? And I'd like to get your take. I mean, what are your thoughts on the ways that we can be good?
I think we just keep driving home here that, again, for anyone out there believing that AI is just going to do things for you, it's not going to happen. We're not there yet. It's a good thing that we're not there yet, because these tools are evolving because of the input of people, because of the things that people are coming up with and the ingenuity of people. So they're going to evolve over time. So again, humans will always have a role with using AI, one form or another, until we're in a human zoo. So that's my take on it. And it takes us, populating it, giving it information, getting output from it, taking a look at it, going back to the drawing board, trying another prompt, getting something else out from it. So yes, we do have a role with it for sure. And again, like we talked about with the legislature and with the rules and the governing of AI, that's going to take human input as well on that in that aspect of it. So
yeah, all really good points there. We talked about it a little earlier with the model collapse. One of the biggest things I would say humans have a part in is creating more human content, like legitimately creating more human content. It's very easy. Yeah, you actually said it just a couple minutes ago. I'm just going to say it again in a slightly different way. Create content, use these tools, but like make sure that there's an element of you in the product, right? Because as AI is, we know AI is going to train on everything. We talked about Zoom earlier, and it'll be at everybody's terms of service at some point, like Steve Jobs. Jesus. All right. Well, I'm living in, but Apple, right? Like, they're building it into everything. Google is obviously building it into all of its like G Suite, right? And then we've got Intel, which is going to put it in all of its products. I mean, AI is definitely here. We can always put a human element in things, is my point, right? And then the other thing, and we mentioned it in a past show as well, is treat AI like it's a child, right? Like you are like a child that you're like your child, right? Like, I don't know. I'm sure some people want to teach children bad things, but I know with my kids, I want them to be decent
The best
human being.
versions. Yeah,
The
best version of themselves.
version, right?
Yep.
Exactly, the best version of themselves. And so let's make the best version of AI that we can, and that is how we're using it. Like, to your point earlier about model collapse, the other piece of it, right, is like the data we're the things that we're using it for and whatnot. And honestly, I'll just be straight up. Like, I don't think that has as much to do with model collapse as other issues, right? With AI, but it is legitimate, right? And you want to use it for good and not for evil, right? And obviously there are different definitions of all of that, which is where some of these, like, hey, let's make a more specific model for X and Y, right? But I think there are some guiding principles, kind of like you said, Rico. Everybody come together, and maybe there are these demarcated, AIs, but
One
there
world
are some
AI.
guiding principles that they're all working within those constructs, right? And so yeah, so I mean, that's another piece of the human element, is that we're guiding these tools, right?
Yeah, I would just imagine that, though. Like we were talking about, if you brought it all together, all the problems we could solve worldwide. If you can get all of them, bringing the AI together.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, and another thing I was going to mention is, with this, the human element, again, going back to it, is I'd say a general best practice for, what you're sharing and what you're not sharing is, think about, for your business, this is very much for your business, would be, would you share it on social media or on your website or some other public facing, forum, or is it something that, you have on your internal documentation, or it's secret sauce or whatever? Like, that's a really simple, okay, it's going to be one of the two things, right? And the only exception there, I would say, is that, with social media, you might share names and whatnot. Or even the website, you might share names. And I wouldn't necessarily share names, because it's a lot of times it won't even be relevant, right? Like, AI in my mind, even when you've got stuff that's searching the open internet, it's not super good at, like, identifying who said what. Like, All In, they did a whole segment on, like, they tried to test it and see if they could figure out how one of the guys would answer certain questions or how another guy would behave or whatever. And it was getting them mixed up. Like, even though the transcript identified the speakers, it just wasn't really good at demarcating. It knew the overall data, but it really wasn't good with, like, taking those names and figuring that out. And so, I'm not saying it's not good at it all, but, like, the reality is it's not going to probably be the most effective use, or it's not going to matter so much if you're putting a name in versus not putting a name in. Just like, and this is just a quick tip, just like a lot of times you don't really, like, if you copy an Excel spreadsheet in and you just paste it into ChatGPT, it might look like a jumble to you, but to ChatGPT, it's structured data. So even though you don't have to put a bunch of punctuation in, like, you obviously want to put some in, but ChatGPT surprisingly cares very little about punctuation, and there are certain things you could do to demarcate and really specify it, but it doesn't really care, to be honest. Same with Bing's image generator and Midjourney. I was reading stuff on both, and it really just doesn't matter all that much when you start, like, it pretty much, commas or punctuation in general is like the lowest weighted thing. It's looking at words, right? It's actually looking at the words.
Yeah, it's like human organization, right? An Excel spreadsheet is so it's easy on our eyes, but it's not that data the same way. Yep. Fantastic point.
Exactly. So I think we could actually close her up here, Rico.
Sure.
What do you have for closing thoughts?
Just that really excited about the promise of AI. I mean, the more we get into these tools and we see how they're applied, especially how even Google, and folks should go take a look at that video. Maybe we'll post a link to that video as well. It's only about 9 minutes, but they're trying, and they're trying to give some transparency and let you know these are the steps. These are what they're trying to follow as guiding principles. So these tools will be safe for everybody. And on the other point too, is what you said about entering personal data. You've talked about writing emails at your company, who it's going to, the sender, the recipient, that has no bearing at all.
Nope.
So you shouldn't be entering that into ChatGPT or anywhere else. Use caution on the internet. No, fantastic episode. Learned a lot of stuff. Looking forward to the next one, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. And folks, we want to hear from you on some of the challenges that you've had around, these ideas, right? So not necessarily a technical limitation. We kind of want to know, what you've run into on privacy or accountability or transparency or ethical stuff, right? We'd love to hear from you. Feel free to comment here below in the comments. And then, if you like this episode and you like what we're doing here, like and subscribe, to the YouTube channel. We're also on TikTok. We've got the podcast on Apple. It's on Audible, Spotify, and at least one more. I think maybe a couple more.
Buzzsprout.
Yeah, Buzzsprout. You can find it on our website, which is antics.tv. Just making it simple there. And we'll always have our latest episode there, folks, as well. So, looking forward to seeing everybody back in the lab here. And again, looking forward to hearing feedback from folks on the episode and in general on the show.
Thanks, everybody.